After his duel with Haknir, Harald looked back at the Pirate King's treasure hoard, took in the power of his new armor, and realized he had no need for it. By now, the act of fighting itself had grown old, while the spoils were something he no longer cared for. With more wealth than he needed, and unparalleled lethality, he found himself with no more great threats to deal with. He returned to Skyrim and the College of Winterhold, getting back to daily business, and trying to decide how to spend his remaining years. With Alduin dead, Tamriel was wary of his former servants, but fortunately for all mortals, Harald brought the dragons to a truce. It was fragile and imperfect, but he was helped by Paarthurnax, Odahviing, and Durnehviir, each respected and feared by their fellows. Rooting out all resistance, Harald and his allies brought the dragons to heel, and purged Tamriel of any last members of their vile cult. In creating this new arrangement, he could only hope those three allies, and the few other dragons who followed the way of the voice, could keep the peace once he was gone. The Greybeards remained more concerned about Harald himself, since his defeat of the most dangerous Dova in the world left only him. The monks looked for new pupils to train, both to carry on their teachings and stand against Harald if he should ever lose himself in his own power. Shaken from their meditations by Alduin's return, they stepped up to guide and control all who wielded the voice. With the rebellion ended, over half of Skyrim's Legion troops were reassigned to other parts of the Empire, as the Aldmeri Dominion rearmed. Many former rebels returned home without further resistance, war-weary and able to recognize a lost cause when they saw one. However, many others carried on as insurgents and bandits in the countryside, and spread chaos until they were hunted down by the Legion, with help from Harald and the dragons. Alarmed by Skyrim's reunification, the Thalmor reinforced and closed off their embassy, withdrew from their headquarters in Solitude, and cut nearly all diplomatic ties. Freed from the strain of Ulfric's rebellion, the Empire's recovery outpaced the Dominions, and the troops of the Legion readied themselves to once again fight their old enemy in another great war. Skyrim's ruling city of Solitude faded with the official end of the rebellion and a slowing of military production. Although it lost its dominance over Skyrim's trade, the city remained an important economic center and home to the revitalized Bard's College. While still young, High Queen Elisif proved willing to listen to her advisors, becoming a popular ruler and maintaining peace in her battered country. On the other side of the war, Windhelm was barely held together by the East Empire Company and the new Jarl Brunwulf Freewinter, who was never able to control the resentment of former rebels or the racial tensions within the hold. The occupying Legion troops cracked down on rebel sympathizers, ironically not because they worshipped Talos, which was usually ignored, but because of their protests against imperial taxes. Ultimately, the local Nord's stubbornness saw many of them fall into poverty and prison, while outsiders seized the opportunities brought by the new peace. As the battle-weary heroes of both the Dragon Crisis and the Rebellion, the people of Whiterun secured a bright future for nearly all within the hold. Its central position in Skyrim's trade network brought great prosperity, while the Legion helped to secure the hold's vast plains and maintain the safety of that trade. Despite the Legion's presence, the hold remained independent under Jarl Balgruf, respected by his subjects, and rivaling Elisif's power with his control over the heart of Skyrim's economy. The only group left behind in Whiterun were the Companions of Jorrvaskr, as the end of the war saw many other mercenary groups spring up. Most of their new rivals lacked the history and reputation of the Companions, but offered much lower prices for their services. With stiff competition and internal disagreements, the proud warriors fell into obscurity. Riften was transformed after a Legion raid on the Ratway, headquarters to the infamous Thieves Guild. Most thieves surrendered and received long sentences in imperial prisons, keeping them out of reach for the new Jarl Maven Blackbriar, and putting a permanent end to the guild. Maven was forced to publicly praise the Legion troops even as they dismantled the foundation of her own criminal network and family wealth, allowing prosperity to slowly return to the Rift. Outside the city, the Dawnguard swelled with new members after their victory over the Volkihar vampire clan, attracting many recruits eager for adventure and more victories of their own. Being so close to Fort Dawnguard, Riften's own troops also trained with the vampire hunters, and the Rift became known as a hold where even the most well-disguised undead could not escape the judgment of fire and silver. In Markarth, Harald's defeat of the Forsworn was barely celebrated, as the wealthy Silverbloods continued using prisoners and poor commoners for back-breaking labor in their silver mines. Jarl Igmund's guard troops also continued to act as a glorified gang, taking bribes, rounding up suspected forsworn, and brutalizing all who stepped out of line. However, Markarth also became a center for research into the Dwemer, helped along by the information and artifacts brought back from Harald's many expeditions. After the Thalmor contingent in the city disappeared without a trace, rumors spread about a mysterious group of highly trained, dragon-slaying Imperial bodyguards hiding in the cliffs, long cut off and seeking to re-establish contact with their emperor. Although mostly ignored, a few intrepid souls followed these rumors, hoping to add tales of their own exploits to the Dragon Slayer's long history. Regaining local respect, the College of Winterhold endured, as Harald and Tolfdir dealt with problems quickly and otherwise let the professors and students pursue their work as they pleased. Harald invited magically talented friends and old comrades to join the college, expanding their pool of knowledge and adding strength to their defenses against further magical threats. He also left his most dangerous magical artifacts under strict security there, keeping them safe whenever he departed to deal with outside business. Pleased to have more active and responsible college leaders at his doorstep, the new Jarl Kraldar worked to attract more residents and rebuild Winterhold into something resembling a functional city again. After weathering grave threats from multiple Daedric princes, Dawnstar returned to its usual calm. Under the new Jarl Brina Marilis, the East Empire Company returned to the port town in force, and the Hold's residents enjoyed the fruits of renewed trade, with few complaints about the defeat of the rebellion. Rumors did spread about a mysterious, unnatural whispering door northeast of the town docks, but when yet another Daedric threat failed to materialize, the rumors faded. Morthal remained a quiet town in the wetlands under Jarl Idgrod Ravencrone, changed as little by the rebellion's end as it had been changed by the rebellion's beginning. However, the defeat of the vampire Movarth left a more lasting impression on the place, inspiring many adventurous residents to take up arms and join the Dawnguard. Apart from the Rift, Morthal became the largest recruitment pool for the resurgent vampire hunters, and no undead could find peace for long, even in the most isolated marshes of the Hold. Rather than peace, Falkreath fell into paranoia with the rebellion's end, as it now bordered the Thalmor-occupied territories of Hammerfell. Hit harder than most towns by the dragon attacks, its ancient graveyard swelled with new headstones, and while Legion troops gathered on the border, the residents prepared to add many more. Even as Jarl Siggeir renewed efforts to tame its dangerous woods and modernize, Falkreath could only continue as a quiet backwater, hoping the next war would stay far away this time. The Orcimer strongholds within Skyrim continued much as they had before, carrying out the Code of Malakath and living simply with the resources in their own territory. There was some annoyance with the Legion, who attempted to recruit every capable fighter they could find, promising adventure and an exciting change from their quiet lives within the walls. And as long as Harald, a human legate and an outsider, held the honor of wielding the mighty Volendrun, many followed the Legionnaires, seeking to prove their worth to Malakath and create legends of their own. With the Ebony Mine open once again, Raven Rock returned to life, with both wealth and security improving for all of its citizens. Without constant threats from Mirak, the Morag Tong, or the rogue mage Eldari, the port town flourished. As outsiders flocked to make their own fortunes, every existing house was soon filled, and new construction projects began for the first time in decades to keep up with the sudden expansion. Traumatized by the reappearance of Hermamora and the horrific death of Storn, the Skull continued their old ways, taking only what they needed from their land and avoiding the bustle of Raven Rock. Now led by Freya, they contented themselves with their traditions and wearily kept up their watch for the next appearance of their ancient Daedric enemy. Shaken out of stagnation by the confrontation with Eldari, Tel Mithryn reached out to the wider world for the first time in many years. Reminding Tamriel of his existence and his exceptional capabilities, Neloth once again became sought after for his staff expertise and deep knowledge of magic, while his apprentices continued their fruitless quest for recognition and validation from their indifferent leader. With overland trade becoming safe again, the Khajiit Caravaneers found business drying up after the rebellion's end, as more competition emerged on the roads. After saying his farewells to Harald and the loose adventuring group they had formed, Karjo returned to Elsewhere with the rest of the caravan, paying off his debts and enjoying a tidy profit as he told stories of his adventures to anyone who would listen. Although still wary of her, Harald eventually helped Serana make a return trip to the Soul Cairn, and informed Valerica that she could finally be safe in Tamriel. With the rest of the Volkihar clan destroyed, Valerica got back to tending her garden and watching over her daughter, while they both were watched in turn by the Dawnguard. Inspired by Harald's example as a mortal who lived fully with the time he had, Serana eventually sought a cure for her vampirism, becoming mortal herself and committing to the Dawnguard's cause. Harald's faithful housecarls could relax somewhat and enjoy the fruits of their labor, each honored with a comfortable home in recognition of their long and difficult service. Well equipped and experienced after fighting at Harald's side, they became advisors to their local guard troops on dealing with magical creatures and monsters. Warriors at heart, they also continued assisting Harald on his adventures from time to time, still proud to serve as long as they were able. As for Harald, he spent the years after his defeat of Mirag finding little excitement in most of his days, which suited him just fine. He laughed off those who suggested he propose marriage to Elisif and become a dragonborn High King, assured the fearful that he had no intention of using his power or his dragon allies to create a new dragon cult, and promised himself that while he was happy to help with minor skirmishes, he would not go along with the Legion if there was a second Great War. He often traveled on college business, participated in Legion raids on new groups of rogue mages, bandits, and other minor threats, and went on expeditions of his own to advance scholarly and magical knowledge, but for the most part, his days of grand conflict were over. His chance to die in glorious battle had come and most likely gone, and upon reflection, this did not bother him. Eventually he concluded that most people, even the bravest warriors, would not get the chance to die a heroic death, and he did not need to find some final challenge to feel his life had been worth living. Rather, he had met the great challenges of his time, struggled greatly, and overcome, confident that his deeds had already secured him a place among the heroes of Sovngarde. With his enemies defeated, and his power seldom needed, the last Dragonborn could rest